Lincoln lived in New Salem for 6 years. He arrived in April of 1831, and he arrived by accident because he got stuck on the mill dam. And he came back a few months later and lived here after that for about 6 years. He was 22 when he arrived here. He left in 1837. Lincoln's connection to New Salem happened by accident. He was traveling to New Orleans. Lincoln and a few of his friends came past the New Salem on the Sangamon River, and they got stuck on the mill dam just outside of New Salem. So Lincoln, who was working on the boat, he unloaded all the goods from the boat, so it righted the boat, which had had its bow stuck up in the air before that. And then he got off the boat, he walked a mile up into the village, where he borrowed an auger, took it back down to the boat, drilled a hole, let out the water, and then because the boat was empty of all its weight, he just slid over the dam. But while this was all happening, Denton Offutt, that was in charge of the boat, was very impressed by Lincoln's kind of ingenuity in doing this. And so he said to Lincoln, well, this looks like a good place, this town. So he thought to himself that he might like to run the mill up down there and maybe also open a store, and he'd like Lincoln to clerk that. So they went on down to New Orleans without any further ado, and then brought the steamboat back up to St. Louis, and Denton Offutt stopped there and picked up some goods to start his store here, and Lincoln walked back from St. Louis to New Salem. It was just an everyday thing back then. Lincoln had many occupations when he lived in the village. First of all, he worked at the mill, and he worked at Offutt's grocery store, and then he also was a postmaster in town. He became a surveyor, and he was a log splitter. He's pretty famously known for splitting logs. You always see statues of him with his axe. This was a trading center, kind of a trading post for all the villages in the surrounding area. And one of Lincoln's favorite people was Jack Armstrong. And Jack Armstrong challenged Lincoln shortly after he arrived to a wrestling match because people in the village had been boasting about this young man's size and strength. Well, Jack Armstrong wasn't doing very well in the match, and some of his friends from Clary Grove thought they might try to help him. Well, Lincoln didn't want any of that. He said he would take each of them on individually, and they decided to back down. Jack Armstrong and Lincoln shook hands and called it a draw. And from then on, Jack Armstrong and the Clary Grove boys were very good friends and very good supporters of Lincoln in everything that he did. Some of my favorite stories are about the people that lived in this house. Isaac and Elizabeth Gulliher were a young married couple, and they knew Lincoln pretty well because Lincoln actually was a lodger in their home on and off for about 4 years. People often ask me, where is Lincoln's house in the village? And I tell them that he didn't have his own home. He lived with other families. He really learned a lot while he lived in New Salem because he listened to people. He listened to their conversations, the things that were important to them every day, and he really learned a lot about the people that he ended up representing. I think the value of Lincoln's New Salem to a visitor is that it's living history. I think people learn really well when they see people dressed up in period attire, when they can see what's around the house, when they can ask questions about why are the chairs hung on the wall, what is that item on the mantelpiece. But a lot of people find a great sense of peace out here, and I think they just enjoy maybe imagining that they were living back in the time for a little while. I think there's just great value to it at being a living history museum.